I'm going to recap some stocks and ETFs that I talked about this week and see where we could be headed this coming week. Hi everyone, it's Dow on the Dow. First up is Target. We ended the week at 108.83, up nearly 0.5%. The 52-week low, 102.93. The 52-week high, 181.70. And for the week, we are down more than 2%. And year to date, we are down roughly 27%. The one-year price target is 147.74, which represents a 35% increase from where we are. And speaking of where we are, this is where we landed. To the north side of that takes us to 2 standard deviations and resistance at 109.56. Above that, 110.14. 110.69. Note this gap that formed to the upside at 111.96 closes out at 112.45 to the south side and back at the base. And also in this case, support 108.44, 107.32, 106.75, and at -4 standard deviations and another level of support and a possible buy-in area, 106.21. When I last talked about this, the stock was at 111.98. And note, when you look at this, this is support. And what happens? We bounce back up to nearly this line here at resistance. It doesn't always touch, but it gets close enough sometimes. And then we went sideways, fell back down. This would turn into support. All right. And when you look at this level, note the sell-off again at 2 standard deviations or close to that, and the buy-in at support. Support, support, support. And if this is support and we are on our way up, this turns into resistance. And this is also another level of resistance and a possible take profit area. I talked about this gap here at 109, closes out at 111.13. We are not done with this gap. Excuse me, we are done with this gap. The other gap we are not done with. Let me just pull that and extend it to right about there. So that has closed out. I'll delete the upper portion. It touched there, so we are done, but this one has not closed out just yet. I always look at the bigger time frame to see bigger moves, but this one closes out at 105.84. So is there some potential to go south? Definitely. In this market that we are in, it's very volatile. All right. And let me go to Netflix. I've talked about this one many times in the past. I'm no longer in this. I had some for my mom because I also trade for her and my sister as well. All right. We ended the day at $400.96, down just a skosh there. The 52-week low is 252.09. The 52-week high, 485. For the week, we are up a whopping nearly 13%. Year to date, up 34%. So clearly, when you play the long game, you do tend to make money overall. Now, the one-year price target is 458.15, which represents a 14% return from where we are. And speaking of where we are, right here to the north side, back to the middle of the trend and the base where prices tend to stay before making their way to the upside or to the downside. To the north side of where we are, let me just recap that again, is roughly 413.37, 441.54. This gap now needs to be extended. We have not hit it yet. All right, this gap starts at 448.44 and 3 standard deviations and another possible take profit area, 456.52. 4 standard deviations is roughly 470.48. And Murat previously told me this is a possible sell zone for him down the line. And this closes out at 476.85, this gap. All right, to the south side we go. -2 standard deviations, or excuse me, this gap forms to the south side at 392.81, 386.20, 371.99, 358.03, and the gap closes out at 346.66. When I talked about it last time, price was at 360.87 and earnings came out. We met the revenue and the earnings, so that was nice, and we went sideways for that run up on earnings, and what goes up must come down, and I anticipate it to go down because gaps generally fill. It could take a while, but you can anticipate it if you like to go short or buy after the gap closes to the downside, or sell as we near that gap to the upside. All right, the RSI is at 44 and it looks like it's starting to go back up. The next one is IBM. We ended the day at 137.16 and we're down more than 0.5%. The 52-week low, 120.55. The 52-week high, 153.21. For the week, we are down more than 1.5%. Year to date, down more than 2.5%, but check out the year, up 8%. The 1-year price target, 147.21, and that's a 7% increase from where we are. All right, to the north side, back at the middle of the trend and resistance, 137.73. 138.68. That gap that you see forms to the upside at 138.94. 3 standard deviations, 139.19. And this gap closes out at 139.89. If we make it to this level, anything outside of 2 standard deviations, I will anticipate a pullback as people take their profits and they run. And then your buy zones down here as people buy the dip. When I last talked about this, we were at 138.46. Note the sell signal down here at support. And from here going up, this is now has turned into resistance. All right, and then it fell down, grinding sideways, back at resistance, falls back down. But again, your sell signals here, your buy signal here, clear sell and buy signals. You can play within 2 standard deviations and -2 standard deviations all day long. And for me, that is conservative. Anything outside, staying in it, to me, you're asking for trouble. If you overextend, you're welcome, because I anticipate price to always fall back down to earth after it hits the outliers, okay? And this gap closed to the downside at 138.60. And I'm going to extend this one as well because we have not hit it. So that gap did touch starting at 139.80, but we have not filled to the upside yet. So we have 2 gaps in play in our channel for next week. The RSI looks like it is turning down at 38. Again, look at these on the different time frames. It gives you different buy and sell signals. If you are day trading, swing trading, or doing short swing trades, investing, etc. The next one is SPY. I've talked about this many times in the past. All right. We ended the week at 421.19. Just make this a little bit bigger so we can see it better. Note your clear sell signal. Resistance falls down. Price tries to go back up again. Didn't hit here. Starting to grind sideways. We can either go down and we follow the baseline here, or we go sideways. All right. So down more than 1%. The 52-week low 368.79. The 52-week high 459.44. And for the month, we are down 5%. Year to date, we are up 9%. 3 years out, up 20%. And 5 years out, we are up 51%. All right. To the north side, back at the base or the middle of the trend, 422.07. 424.55, 425.77, 427.06. To the south side, -2 standard deviations, 419.62, 418.35, 417.03. Note the sell signal here and resistance, the sell off as people take their profits, and now we're back along this line, grinding it out. Again, sell signal, sell signal. This turns into support on the way down and the bounce. And if you click on your bot for your buy and sell signals, you'll see that it is in line with my predictions here, with my TA, I should say. All right, note the gap that closed to the downside here at 431.67. This gap has not closed yet. I will just extend that until it touches to the upside. And this one has not closed either. I do love looking for gaps. Usually when you hit it to the upside, I will see price start to fall again. If we are hitting it from the bottom, touching, the bottom of the gap, I expect a run. All right. Note this gap closed to the upside at 426. We made our way up there, and this one closed at 420. So you can play gaps all day long. And if you do that, make sure though you check out quality stocks. Let me readjust that. I'm going to speed this up, all right? And I'll just give you -2 and 2 standard deviations just to be a little bit more efficient and faster here. All right, we ended the week at 208.47. The 52-week low, 185.13. The 52-week high, 228.97. To the downside, 207.51. To the upside, 210.02. Note the bounce at support here, sell-off at resistance. Sell-off at resistance here as well. And looking left, this gap closed out at 213.60. This one has not closed out yet. We will just extend it and keep on extending it as we need. And when I last talked about this, price was at 213.09. Intuitively, when I see that price has reached this point, I know it's going to go down. It bounced off support, went back up, and then went all the way back down to support again. Apple. Where Apple goes, my account overall goes. So right now, my account overall is down, and also because I own a lot of VTI, it's down as well. But I'm not afraid. This to me is a buying opportunity for long-term investments. Do not panic if you are down a lot. It will come back if you are in quality stocks. I've gone through this many times. Do you see what I see here? Just looking at this generically, see the W forming if you like to play patterns. Here, 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 and maybe here. I hope so. All right, this is Apple on the 5-minute time frame. I do love going over Apple. We ended the week at 172.88. -2 standard deviations takes us to 172.32. To the upper channel, that takes us to 175.48. Obviously, a lot of levels in between, but again, I'm trying to make this short now because I am very long. All right, to the south side, there's a gap that takes us down to 166.91. This could be a buying opportunity, but just look at your RSI, your MACD, and then pull this down and look at this on the daily, the weekly, and the monthly, and you can anticipate where we are going. This is just short term right here on the 5-minute time frame. This gap closed out at 178.41. And this one, although we touched at the bottom, we have not hit the upper gap yet. So I will extend this as well. That will close out at roughly 182.67. The next one is triple Qs. Let me readjust. That's option R if you're using the Mac. I go between a Mac and my other one. What is it? Microsoft? All right. 354.62 is where we ended. Here's a look at the performance for the week. Oh, right there. All right. To the north side, at 2 standard deviations, 358.28. There's a gap that takes us back to 368.27. We are not in that channel yet, but just something to be aware of. And to the south side, at -2 standard deviations, 352.85. All right, this gap closed out. So I will, if it shoots up, it fills down. So that's why I have it in red to remind me that we have a gap filled to the downside. Right here at 365.42. When I last talked about this, price was at 369.41. Note the sell signal here, the sell signal here. If we are up here and we go down, this turns into support, and look at the bounce. So this is where we were at below -2 standard deviations, you could see, and then there was a bounce back to resistance. Price could not go up to this level, and sometimes it takes a long time to get back there. But these are just quick in and out. If you play it to the middle of the trend from the upside to the downside, that would be a quick in and out also if you're just trying to do day trading. Boeing. We ended at 180.04. -2 standard deviations takes us to 178.51, and 2 standard deviations takes us to 184.56. This gap closed to the downside at 185.62. From here at resistance, we fell all the way down to here. If we make it along this line, or this line, I will anticipate a little bit of a bounce. Overall, the market is going down, but obviously you can trade within the day and swing trade it as well. But I like to sometimes get in and get out as quickly as possible because I'm a little fraidy cat. No, I just like to lock in my profits when I know the market looks like it's going to go down. All right, this gap has not closed to the upside, so that's something to look forward to. We've already touched the bottom of it at 187.04, but did not close it out at 191.29. I talked about it here, and Murat alerted me to price and his target at 210 back on here, but we're not quite there yet. So I'll be writing this stock out. I also own it for my mom. Fortunately, we are still up even though we are down. All right, the next one is XOM. My dad did get in on this. And we ended the week at 111.08, down more than 1.5% at -2 standard deviations. That's 110.73. If we make it down to -4 standard deviations, that's 109.09. And to the north side takes us to 114.07. There's a gap that takes us to here, closing out at roughly 106.52. So I anticipate some weakness as well. Again, gaps typically fill. This one closed out at 110.38. Note the sell-off here close to resistance, the sell-off here at resistance, and then the slight bounce at support. All right, all of these gaps close. This one to the upside at roughly 108.81, this one at 111.43, and this one at 110.38. This one to the south side at 107.32. So since we do have another gap down here, if you like to go short, just wait for it to close down here before you get back in again to the long side. That could be a strategy. The next one is Amazon. Oh, wait a minute. I just saw another gap to the upside. Again, you want to check these out on a larger time frame so you can see more gaps and the potential to see where we are headed. Just look at the charts and it will tell you. Okay, this gap fell down. So because we fell, it's going to close to the upside. Let me change out my color. Oh, that is green to indicate for me going to the upside or long. And that would take us to, let me remove my magnet. That is 115.57 and to the upside, so I've turned it green. So we've got a gap that takes us to the south side and a gap that takes us to the upside. Let me know which direction you think XOM is going to go. Ignore that line. Those are my old support and resistance lines, or I mark it out as old price targets. The next one is Amazon. We ended the week at 125.17, down more than 2.5%. This is a look at the performance to the north side. Takes us to 128.02, 123.48. This gap closed to the downside at 128.27. This one at 131.39. And this one at 132.50. And this, I last talked about it, price was at 129.79 here. Oh, and there's a little gap right here that I am seeing. Just this tiny one that filled out already. So again, if price goes up, you should anticipate it filling to the downside, and it did. You can use the magnets to get a better box. It'll hit the magnet and it will help you get to the price point with better accuracy. There, I just turned on the magnet so it pulls it. All right. So again, this went up, so I anticipate price to close to the downside, and it did. And it closed to the downside at 129.99. And that's how you mark out your gaps. And thank you to Marat for also giving me a lot of TA, and he likes to let me know, because I can't pay attention to every stock. It's just so much going on. So he gives me projections to the upside and to the downside. And I appreciate that so much. All right, let me extend this gap that has not filled. Closes out at roughly 135.21. So we have something to look forward to the upside. And this one at 139.40. And when I looked at this last, this was support, bounced up, went to resistance along here, went sideways, fell back down, created that gap to the upside there, and filled. So if you are down here and you go long, you made some money. And then we went back down again, grinding along the base there. And your clear sell signal up here, your buy signal down there at support, resistance, another sell-off, and we are right now grinding at resistance. So will it be going to the south side or to the north side? Well, we've got a couple gaps that take us to the north side, but flip this over onto the bigger time frames so you can see gaps to the downside. The next one is PayPal. We ended the week at 53.39. I am in this one and upside down, but I'm not panicking. I know it will come back, not as strong maybe as I had thought in the past. My conviction is not as strong on this stock as before. It's got a lot to prove, but still you can trade it. But there are obviously better things to trade, but there's a gap that takes us to the upside. We are right here at 53.39. That gap would be filled if we hit 2 standard deviations, which is 54.21, and it fills at 54.79. To the south side at -2 standard deviations will take us to 52.87. Note the gap that filled looking left at 55.20, this one at 55.79, and this one, when I talked about it, price went up. It was at support, ran up to resistance, and fell back down, grinding along this base here, really just doing a whole lot of nothing, just quick scalping in and out. And there was a gap that was created and it closed out right here as well, I see. But I do tend to look for the bigger gaps. This little stuff gets closed out by my standard deviations that I like to use. So look at all that. We have tanked with PayPal. It's unfortunate. And finally, Tesla. I talk about this one a lot. And Murat is also in this one. And he sent me a message that said to make sure I check out Tesla on the RSI on the daily time frame. So I will do that in just a moment. But we are at 27.60 roughly. And he thinks that the RSI indicator could obviously go lower. On December 15th, 2022, it went from 144 to 101, about 35%. And he does anticipate buying in possibly on Monday. All right, so check out the comments and you'll see a lot of TA from him. All right, this again is on the 5-minute time frame. Let me mark this out first so you can see that. All right, this is where we ended. To the north side takes us to 215.05 at 2 standard deviations, and at 4 standard deviations, 225.20. I know I said I was going to go from -2 to 2, but this is the last one I'm going to go over. This gap would close out at 220.01 if we hit 4 standard. That will be wiped out. But the next one is 242.69. There's a gap to the south side that takes us down to 208.29, but the middle of the trend would wipe out that gap anyway at 204.91. And another gap forms at 198.81. -2 standard deviations, 194.32. This closes out at 193.42, and 184.46. If you've traded this one for a while, you know that this stock is very volatile. All right, looking left, Murat had mentioned to me also back on the 18th, right here, that he anticipated price to go between 220 and 218. And sure enough, it did. That's where I boxed it out here. And that gap actually, as I just mentioned, started at 220. It started right here on the 19th. And it closed out at 217.82. Is that the 20th? Yeah, it formed on Friday, the end of the 19th, Thursday, and then on the 20th. All right, what else do I see? Well, I don't like this. Look how strong this line is to the south side. We had earnings, not so hot. Okay, that sent us down. Inflation is sending us down. People are skittish. The economy, the war is just negative news, negative news. All right, but here, as you can see, when I talked about it last, well, not last because it was at 242.68 the last time I talked about it, and price has fallen down. Note even right here, this is at the -2 line, and it bounced up to nearly the middle of the trend, which is resistance, back down. So you can catch the moves. Again, staying within -2 standard deviations, the baseline, the middle of the trend, and 2 standard deviations. All right. And then obviously this one at 251.12 when I last talked about it, grinding to the right. All right. And then look at this move. We hit resistance, fell back just a little bit, went sideways, back up, and then sideways again, and then started falling down. And from up here, this is support and a little bit of a bounce. These are really small moves, but this gap has closed out as well, and I will pull that out right there. All right, that does it for me. I've gone very long. If there is a stock that you would like me to go over, please let me know, and thank you so much for watching.